So good afternoon, everybody. It's me again. Not the only one to present more than one presentation, but the first one to do it. And yeah, after the comprehensive presentation given by Paul, which was mentioning the time-critical 1 option, I'm going to talk about time-critical option 2 and 3, or shortly TC2 and TC3, which I might occasionally use during my presentation. I will talk a little bit about the history of how we ended up where we are these days. I will skip the TC1 because Paul have already told you about it. I will talk about TC2 and TC3 and then give at the end some review for it. So it all started in early 90s, where the member states requested to have some option of running their jobs or retrieving their data based on the accomplishment of our products generation. And this is exactly what Paul explained to you is done within the TC1. But later in the 90s, especially after ECMWF started delivering the ensemble forecasts, that was already not so much enough because the amount of data grew a lot, and the member states wanted to be able to actually use this data within our ECMWF HPC. And this is where the idea of allowing the member states to do it turned into something that actually started working. And then later on in the early 2000s, Greece also wanted to generate some products for the Olympic Games that they were hosting back then. And this is how we ended up with TC3. I will shortly explain the differences between them. Yeah, so around 2004, ECMWF makes the proposal for a TC framework to the Technical Advisory Committee, including these 3 options, and the Council approves this framework. And finally, in 2005, the 3 time-critical options were implemented and the guidelines were published to the users. So, I will start now with TC2. The major difference between TC1 and TC2 is that in case of TC1, users can basically run a single script that is doing a single task. It can retrieve some data, process it, generate some products, and maybe send the products elsewhere through EC-trans, or save the files locally, or transfer them somewhere else. In case of TC2, that is meant for the more complicated suites that have multiple tasks with complex interdependencies between them, such as running a whole model suite. For example, gathering some input data, pre-processing it, then running the actual numerical weather prediction model, and then generate a whole variety of products based on that model forecast, and then send them either back to the local weather service or some other customers. The suites have to be developed according to the specific guidelines that you can find in our documentation page. You can see the link to it, and I hope you can use it. Of course, the TC2 has to use our EasyFlow framework in order to orchestrate all the interdependencies between the tasks. And if you are not so familiar with EasyFlow, then first of all, you will have a whole day dedicated to it on Friday. And secondly, we are here to provide some guidance for you to start using it if you are not familiar with it. Once you have your suite ready and running in a test environment, you will need to issue a request by your local technical advisory committee representative, and this TC2 activity will need to be approved by us. Once it is approved, the next step is to make it actually operational. And once it is operational, it will be monitored by the ECMWF operators, which means you will need to define some specific instructions on what needs to be done in case of failure, and so on. And our operators will follow the instructions you provide and act accordingly in case their intervention is required. Of course, running the TC2 tasks can be computationally intensive, and your SBU allocation will be charged for running these tasks. Currently, this is the map showing the currently existing TC2 activities among the different countries. And you can see we have 11 countries and consortia running those TC2 activities, and 2 others are coming soon to join the club. In order to be able to run the TC2 activity, we will create a special user for that, starting with the letter Z and followed by probably your country. For example, I hope you can see it on the picture below. We have, for example, ZAT stands for Austria, ZIT would be for Italy, and so on. These TC2 suites will be able to run on all our 4 HPC complexes they will get a special access to the high priority queues. In my earlier presentation this morning, I told you about the standard normal queues on ECS and HPC. Here we have a special set of two queues. One is time critical fractional for the smaller jobs, and the other one is time critical parallel queue for running the massively parallel jobs, taking at least one node or more. You will get a dedicated Lustre file system to store the input and output data for these time-critical suites, which are not part of the standard file systems that all HPC users get an access to, and they will also have a separate quota for your usage. As I said before, these suites are monitored by our operators who should follow the instructions that you can provide for every single task on what to do with them in case the intervention is needed. And you will also get the access to our production data store for data transmission. Now for a TC3 option. This one is basically a slight enhancement of time critical option 2, in a sense that instead of you, the member state, being responsible for running the time critical suite, the responsibility becomes ours. Of course, here as well as in TC2, you will need to prepare an ECFlow suite. You will have to test it and make sure that it all runs smoothly. And once it is, you basically transfer it to our responsibility after we test it in our E-suite, which is the experimental one. If and when it passes all the tests, it becomes operational and becomes part of our O-suite. The member state will be responsible for the migration of the application. For example, when we get a new HPC system, then the member state users will have to adopt everything and make sure that it runs on our new system. But as soon as it runs smoothly, it is monitored and by our operators, and we are providing the first level support, usually in case when the problems are more on the technical side. For example, if we had some product delivery delay and your tasks crashed because they ran out of the waiting timeout, then our operators can restart the suite or the specific task. But of course, if it's more on a scientific level, if something is not appropriate with the internals of the failing tasks, then the operators will contact the time-critical suite owners who will need to take care of the potential failures. And as well as the TC2, this one should be requested and by your representative and approved by us. This is the map showing the currently running TC3 suites. As you can see, France is probably the biggest customer of those, but we also have quite a few from several other countries. And this is the combined plot of both TC2 and TC3. Here you have two plots showing the growth with the time of the usage by member states. Unfortunately, these two plots are not very updated. They are valid for 2023, showing the last 2 years of growth. But as I showed you earlier, we keep extending this activity, both TC2 and TC3. On the left side, you can see the number of time-critical suites, version option 2 and 3, and on your right-hand side, you can see the total SBU consumption, which basically tells how much runtime all the tasks are requiring. Last but not least, we, of course, even though we have very specific and strict guidelines, we encourage our users to follow these guidelines, and actually we make sure before the suite becomes operational that you are following these guidelines while preparing these suites. In case you need to change your something in those suites, this has to be coordinated with us because once your suite is approved, we assume a certain amount of resources that we dedicate to run these suites. We basically keep them available, and we prevent other users to use our computing nodes for that. So in case you want to, let's say, extend the domain area of your model, or if you are running an ensemble and you want to run more members, or if you want them to run faster and you need more computing nodes for that, you cannot and should not change it by yourself before you coordinate it with us and get the approval for that. European Weather Cloud can also be used for time-critical activities. Roberto described the service yesterday, so you should be already familiar with it. We can support a containerized workload on Atos HPC, as it was mentioned by Xavi earlier today. And yeah, well, we can think, if the need comes, we can think of having some workshop dedicated to the time-critical activities, inviting the member states to share their experience, suggest their improvements, and share the knowledge. And with that, I think I can finish already, not before inviting you to review the relevant documentation page that we have for that. And of course, you are always welcome to contact us through tickets or directly if you want to discuss it. Thank you.